Well, thank you for joining us. I am Tanya Tucker. I'm the Chief of National Engagement and Partnerships with Full Frame Initiative. And I have the extreme pleasure of sitting down for a chat today with one of our senior fellows, Phyllis Becker. We have this wonderful class of senior fellows who are truly lending their talent and skills and their deep expertise in the fields that they come from to this overall mission and North Star of making this a country where everyone has a fair shot at well-being. And certainly our team at FFI is much better for having them on this journey with us. So thank you, Phyllis. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me today and to give our audience an opportunity to get to know you a little better, the work that you're doing, and sort of why well-being and what that means to you and why that's driving some of your work. So as you know, Phyllis, as you have been connected to FFI and this well-being journey for quite some time now. And so that we talk about well-being as individuals and us collectively being whole. And we often say that we should be taking the time to see each other in the full frame of our lives. So I'd love to kind of start and kick off our conversation with getting to know you a bit more in the full frame. So if I were just to say, who is Phyllis Becker? How would you respond to that? What do you want to share with the audience?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for this conversation. And it's always a pleasure to talk with you as well. And I would say, if I had to describe myself in a full frame sort of way, I would say I love jazz. I'm a Midwesterner with Eastern roots. I am all about youth justice and well-being, and I'm a poet. Those are some of my frames.
Awesome.
I also like to garden, not that great at it, but I only have tomatoes left, but that's one of the things I love to do too.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I can say, having known you for a while now, I think I have benefited from sort of all of those gifts that you
thank you. And the other thing I want to say is that in terms of my work with full frame practices what it preaches, because it also has been so wonderful as a senior fellow, and I know you guys do it with staff as well, and really nurturing and supporting people to bring their whole selves into the job. And so that's it. It's nice
Great.
to have that and be a part of that.
Great, thank you. So let's start with kind of like what brought you to FFI and engaging with us and sort of like piqued your interest into well-being in the first place. So, how did this fit in with your career journey and what you were doing?
Well, that's kind of I have to go way back.
That's fine.
To my first job out of college with the Missouri Division of Youth Services. And I, like many people who go into youth justice, I came into that to help kids. I really wanted to help young people. And, I was in my position as a frontline staff for about 2.5 years, and I was really getting discouraged because I wasn't feeling effective. I didn't like how young people were talked about and how they were treated on some levels. And I just was really spinning my wheels there. And so I was thinking about leaving. And then I was blessed to have a visionary leader who was put into position over our region. Her name was Gail Hobbs, and she started she came into our system and really started to give words and actions to what I knew in my heart, how young people needed to be treated, what I thought was good for young people that were involved with us. So it's kind of through her leadership, she took us on a path, and I was lucky to be a part of this whole transformation of the Missouri Division of Youth Services, kind of shifting our systems, thinking about how they looked at young people and families, really supporting young people's strengths and addressing needs versus kind of reacting to behavior, investing in staff to enhance their skills and abilities to really truly engage with kids, not just babysit or supervise, and then, you know, keeping all the system emotionally and physically safe. So no, it was not labeled as well-being back then, but that's what we were really starting to get into. And I was kind of forged. That was like critical to my development as a person and also in my career. So I left DYS after being there for about 15 years. And when I came back in 2008, Tim Decker was the director, and I came back at the state level, not a local level. And we got connected to the Full Frame Initiative through our getting the Innovations in Government Award. So folks in that group connected us to Katya. And so I got introduced to the well-being framework, and it was such a fit. It was, you know, we were looking at ways to strengthen our system. We were looking at ways to align it. We were looking at ways to try to sustain the strengths of our system, because we had many strengths, but it's so easy in systems to drift, to move away, to go backwards. So that framework was really so helpful to us, and supporting and strengthening our system. And also it's nice to be a part of, you know, I started going to some of the Full Frame conferences and convenings and things like that, and just to be around a group of people that were thinking about, you know, systemic well-being. So it was really nice to have that as a resource. So
what are you thinking? So thinking back to your DYS days and your partnership with us, what are you most proud about in terms of, you know, the well-being work with Missouri DYS?
I'm most proud of the fact that we approached it systemically, and that it wasn't a cookie cutter training. The Full Frame was very good at seeing where we were at and what we thought we needed and supporting that. And so it wasn't kind of a flash pan kind of thing. We really, really thought it through. We really tried to figure out how to integrate it with a lot of the many good things we were doing, so staff didn't feel like it was just another drop down or, you know, a new flavor of the month. And so I feel really good about that process, and how we implemented that, and that it was systemic.
So you have gone from one of our, you know, great partners in this well-being work to coming on board as a senior fellow. And so can you talk a little bit about kind of your impetus for wanting to do that, and what your work looks like, you know, now?
So when I retired and from DYS, and Katya and I were talking, and she brought up the idea of a fellowship, and I really had no idea what that might mean, you know. So it was such a different kind of role than working in state government. So in terms of my growth and development, it was a big leap to kind of do something like that. So but then when I started to get into it and thinking about, well, what could I do and how could I do that? Do a fellowship that would support, you know, systems making changes and being transformational in their work. I started to get excited about it and started thinking of the zillion different ways I could try to connect well-being to, you know, juvenile justice, across the country. And, you know, and what would that look like? And so that's kind of, that was the beginning of it. So I had these kind of goals around, at that point in time, I was doing lots of training. So I was trying to connect well-being to all the training work I was doing. I was, you know, really working with folks in the juvenile justice system and connecting them to the well-being blueprint. And I got some really good networking and folks and some key people in juvenile justice involved with the well-being blueprint. And so it just started to grow from there. And it's been very rewarding. I feel like juvenile justice or youth justice is really prime for thinking about systemic well-being, because it's kind of at a crossroad at this time.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little more? I was just going to ask, like, where do you see sort of the state of youth justice right now, and you know, where are there kind of opportunities that you think align so well with well-being and well-being thinking?
So if you think about youth justice kind of on an arc, you know, from its roots that were extremely punitive and kind of based on adult corrections, military style kind of principles that really, as we know now, very harmful to young people, developing young people. And, you know, I would also say to adults, but we also know that you know, young people are at a different stage. And so it was just, the impact was just traumatic. So kind of shifting out of that. So we're getting more information. When I started DYS and we were doing innovations, everybody just thought we were, you know, did not think we were hugging a thug, basically, is what we were labeled as, right? So there's been so much more research and understanding around youth development, around ACEs, around adolescent development, and then also we're just really understanding more about the systemic impacts on people and how that gets them to where they are. So started shifting and moving into providing treatment, moving out of correctional punitive kind of strategies to treatment, rehabilitative, you know, positive youth development work in systems. And now it's moving, and many of the kind of progressive thinkers in juvenile justice are really moving towards the arc of a community justice system, where we really put our focus on what can we do in the community to keep kids from getting in our system? And for those kids that do get in our systems, how can we support them much, much better when they get out of our programs so they don't move further into the correctional system?
Yeah. So you have been one of our, you know, longest tenured senior fellows. We just won't let you go every time your term is up. Like, can we sign her up again for another stint? And so I'm wondering, with the work you've been doing, you know, around, you know, well-being and juvenile justice, youth justice, one, like, where are you seeing some bright spots of that work? And then where do you know, obviously, like, you're not finished yet and there's still lots to do. What are you hoping for in terms of like future impacts of well-being being integrated more and sort of more of an understanding?
So I think, you know, as we, in Missouri, as we evolved in our thinking, and then as other people started to think that way, you know, there's been a tremendous decline in youth arrest. It's like since 1996, there's been an 80% decline in youth arrest and 75% decrease in incarceration. So there's I think some of the things that we're doing well is having an impact. And we know what works. So you know, some of the things that I've been doing and trying to leverage and take advantage of the opportunity is that people really want to embrace a well-being focus. Really, people, I mean, we all desire well-being. It really resonates with people. And I think I've seen incredible alignment in some real key places, like with the youth justice correction leaders, youth justice leaders for justice, YCLJ, and OJJDP. I mean, the leadership there, their principles are seeing kids as kids, supporting youth, centering youth and families. So there's major shifts in thinking, and these folks, and I'm part of this work with them, are about changing policy structures, laws, and also shifting resources out of the kind of carceral strategies to strategies that we know work for kids. And whether and really trying to emphasize helping kids when they're in the community. Because I've talked to many parents of young people in the system. We're like, we've been having trouble and struggling for a while, and there just was no place to go. We didn't feel like we couldn't find any help. I couldn't do it because I was so busy. So, are there ways we can really put some of our investment and a lot of our investment into that, so we don't have to take kids out of their homes? Not unless we really, really, really need to. And if we do take young people out of their home, what are the kind of systems and services that we need to have to truly support their well-being in ways that's going to sustain their ability to be in the community, and participating in ways that engage all the full frames of their being, so, but even with all these shifts and folks really embracing and looking at systemic well-being, there's huge disproportionality in the juvenile justice system still, and racial and ethnic disparities, and gender challenges. So in terms of the future, I would, we really have to kind of get our arms around that.
Yeah. You, when I started at FFI, were one of the first kind of external partners that people were like, well, you have to meet Phyllis, and you have to talk with Phyllis. And I just remember one of the early convenings, I think it was when YCLJ was like getting off the ground, and met you there, and met you
right, yes,
in person. And I have to say that, I mean, with our work for well-being, we see this both as people who are, working inside systems and leading systems as part of that change, plus the people who are impacted, right, by those systems, either directly or their families or in their communities, also being part of that change. And I just think that, like, the way you have approached your work, I think throughout your career, and certainly, your championing of well-being, is just further proof of that there are people inside systems who want to do better and want to do more, and are seeing young people as just as young people
yes,
who need all the things that all young people need. And I think that has been certainly a like boost and spark for me coming into this work, and really seeing that, like,
yes,
this isn't a us them, like, right, there are people in the systems who want to change as much as the people who are impacted and outside the systems want to see that change. Do you think, like, what do you see right now, given the context, and whether that's just youth justice, or just our larger context? Do you see sort of, and we talked about opportunities, do you see big barriers right now for this kind of, right, systemic and kind of whole thinking around well-being and bringing that to bear.
Say that last part again.
So do you see any like big barriers given our current context, right, in advancing this work and moving it along?
Well, you know, our current political environment is there are many aspects of that that are posing problems and could actually continue to pose problems, particularly when we're dealing with the issues of racial and ethnic disparities. And so that I see as a challenge. System change is not easy. It is so difficult. And so really having leaders who can take up that challenge and get to, a place in their systems where they're actually making some huge, making a dent in terms of core issues, not just symptoms. That's so hard. So supporting those leaders who are doing that. Also just right now, we have the whole challenge of a perception of youth crime increasing, and a lot of reaction to, some real high profile kind of youth crime incidents. And so it's really trying to keep that context that no, youth crime is down. It's historically down. It's not it's nowhere close to what it used to be. And so we may be having some blips here and there. And let's, be honest. So we had, a pandemic, and the young people that get in our systems and their families were the ones most impacted by the pandemic. So that has had an impact, I think, on some of these blips we're seeing. So, so just writing that whole piece out and not overreacting. And, sometimes when there's challenges like that, people want to revert back to practices and policies that didn't work. So those are challenges I think we're dealing with in the youth justice world.
Yeah. And since I never like to end on a challenge, I always like to end. Can we end on like the hope and the bright pieces? But what do you see either as hope that gets us past some of these challenges and barriers that you mentioned, or perhaps even a piece of advice you would give others who are working towards a brighter future for our young people?
Well, I would say don't lose sight, of the end game, of the North Star. When things look bad, really look at what that is a symptom of, and then what are the true strategies to help that, and don't buy into the hype or whatever, and also for me, there's hope with the young people, the kids. I mean, and the more the youth justice system, which we have been doing more and more of, involving young people and their families in the conversation and partnering with them, those youth are just so, when they are able to be who they are and bring their strengths and talents and to the table, there's just so powerful. And then like any other youth. So the youth who are impacted and the youth who are not impacted give me hope, because there's so many young people, I think, who are actually very much aligned with ideas about well-being, and are willing to, bring their talents to the table to help us solve the problems.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We are certainly grateful that you're bringing your talent to our well-being table, and are in this, movement with us. It is all the better, for your mainly dedication and commitment. I come at this work from youth development, so I've got, soft spot in my heart for young people and things that affect young people. So really appreciate your journey and your continued work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.